We have tons of news to discuss today, including several big signings around the NHL, including a couple big ones in Winnipeg. Rasmus Dahlin gets an 8-year extension in Buffalo. We also have a signing in Tampa, some injury updates, loss of roster juggling as teams had to submit their final rosters to be cap compliant this afternoon. We also have some trade talk around the NHL, looking at Ottawa, Vancouver, and Toronto. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about today. It's been actually a pretty busy news cycle. Some of this information's already been put out on other videos, so if you want a more in-depth analysis, certainly check the YouTube cards. There's a couple other news videos already out today, but I just want to recap and add to what's already been a busy day. For example, Rasmus Dahlin, we started the day with him. I haven't discussed that yet in video. 8-year extension at $11 million a year. That's $88 million commitment to Dahlin. Certainly has emerged in the last year or two as being one of the top younger defensemen across the NHL. During his draft year, he was kind of viewed upon and kind of given the title of generational defenseman. Obviously, early in his career, he looked good, but didn't quite look good to the point that he was living up to that hype. I think finally with the current coach he has been able to help bring out the best in him the last couple of years. I know Coach Granato seemed to have done some good things there with him, and maybe that's just what he needed. Certainly previous coaches, I think, might have struggled to help bring out the best in Dahlin. But as much as it's hard to debate that he's not worth the money, I think if you're looking at the long-term projections, looking at what he's going to likely do, where the cap is going, I can understand how they can justify the contract, but this is something that you get when you bridge players. You risk yourself into having to pay them a lot more when they're a little bit more older, more established. Like look at some of the other deals we've seen, like the Jake Sanderson 8x8. For example, that's looking pretty good right now. I know they're not exactly at the same spots of their career. Obviously, Dahlin's several years ahead of them, but same concept that when you get a player coming out of their ELC, if you can go the 8-year deal, then you will save money. So obviously, he's gonna make significantly more than guys like Quinn Hughes and Adam Fox. For right now, Dougie Hamilton as well. A few others, obviously not too many defensemen making that kind of money, except for like Erik Karlsson making similar money as like Drew Doughty. But like I said, he is one of the top young defensemen. But the Sabres, bridged him compared to a lot of these other guys going straight to the 8-year deal, which is why he got more money. So you can make an argument that one strategy is better for the team, one strategy is better for the player. But hard to say what happens. Sometimes players want that security as soon as they can get it, and teams want it as well. But at the end of the day, it creates a long-term stability for him, and he'll be a Sabre for a long, long time. So I'll certainly like to know what everybody thinks of this extension. Is he worth the money? Do you think it's fair? Is it too much? Let me know in the comments down below. We got a couple of monster signings in Winnipeg today as well. This one we did talk about in another video. Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuyck signed matching 7-year extensions at $8.5 million. I think those contracts are pretty reasonable, pretty fair, to be honest. If you look at their market value and what a lot of places were projecting they might get on the next deal, they were all around this similar amount, in some cases a little bit more. I mean, Hellebuyck we knew was looking for Vasilevsky type money. This is a little bit less than that, and to be honest, I think it lines up well. I mean, obviously Vasilevsky's got Stanley Cups on his resume. Hellebuyck does not. Otherwise, statistically speaking, they have been. Hellebuyck's been keeping up for the top goalies around the league. Looking at like the Sorokin extension that was signed not long ago, it's fair. I think these are good deals for both players, and certainly Winnipeg went into the offseason with some doubts that either of these guys wanted to stay. Obviously, they liked where the offseason went. They obviously liked where the team plan is that's been given to them by management, and they worked this out. So it's a huge day in Winnipeg to get these two stars locked up. Of course, Scheifele was the first ever draft pick of the Jets coming back when they moved from Atlanta. Tampa also announced that they've signed Austin Watson to a 1-year deal. He was in camp on a professional tryout. There's still a bunch of other players around NHL camps on tryouts that are not signed, and the reason for that is that they had to be cap compliant today. So you obviously throughout the next week or so, you're going to see teams make other moves to kind of create space to make those happen. There's going to be a few few. Like, I know the Leafs want to sign Noah Gregor, and there's definitely a couple other guys around, like maybe Comtois in Vegas. Hard to say, but Watson we knew was likely getting a contract. He signed for $776,665, and that number is precise just to get him exactly like the max they can give to get him right to the upper limit of the cap with their LTIR availability. So Watson gets a 1-year deal in Tampa. We also learned Matt Murray is going to be out for about 6 to 8 months with bilateral hip surgery. We had heard at the beginning of training camp that he was going to be going on LTIR, that he needed a significant surgery, but we didn't really know a lot of details. Now we do. So that confirms not only was he LTI eligible now, but he will be on it for the entire season. Even if it's closer to the 6 months than the 8, he still wouldn't be able to play during this regular season. Best case scenario for him is that if the Leafs went on a deep playoff run, that maybe towards the end of his or towards the end of the run, he could be available if they ran into injuries or something like that. But I suspect that even on a deep playoff run, the odds of that happening would be slim. But we have seen, look at last year, we did see a number of teams end up using their number 3 goaltender. But he may not even be that, to be honest, depending on where they're at with the season. Obviously, they've got Samsonov, they've got Joe Wall, and they've got Marty Jones. So, Murray at this point is probably no better than the number 4. So I think he's fair to say he's played his last game with the Leafs. His contract will expire. He'll be on the entire year LTI. And I don't know what the future holds for him. It's hard to say after a big surgery like that. And obviously missing significant time over the past year or two as well. You don't want to say his career is over, but it's certainly in jeopardy. That we can say with certainty. A few other roster moves around the league, things to keep an eye out for. Carolina, obviously they don't have their own AHL affiliate this year, which is an issue, and they ran into that because of the Chicago Wolves going into a new something that we haven't seen before, and they're now an independent American Hockey League franchise, so they're not affiliated with any NHL team. So they can't just send all their prospects or players that they want to one spot. So they've had to loan players out to various teams. So for their number 3 goalie, Kochetkov, he's going to Tampa's American Hockey League team in Syracuse. I know I've seen a big fuss over social media about that. It's really nothing to be concerned about. Clearly, he's not belonging to Tampa. There's no trade. There's nothing like that. He can be recalled at any time. And I guess the only downfall to that is that when you're loaning prospects to other teams' affiliates, you got to wonder, where they rank in the pecking order. Are they going to get equal fair playing time, which is good for their development? Are they going to have to sit a lot? You just don't want to see their development stalled, right? So you hope that everything works out. But, they had to loan a few other prospects to other American Hockey League teams that belong to other NHL teams as well. So hopefully they can get that sorted out and have their own affiliate for next year, because it's not ideal by any means. Looking like it's a possibility at the very least the Pittsburgh Penguins forward Jake Gensel will play on opening night for the Penguins. He has been upgraded to from the no contact jersey to regular, and now at this point he was considered like week to week and expected to miss about 5 games when we first came into camp was the latest update. And now they're saying he's a game-time decision. So clearly going from that no-contact jersey to contact, things are progressing way ahead of schedule, and he may not miss any time at all. So we'll have to see. If he doesn't play opening night, I would suspect, within a game or so after that, he'll be ready to go. Might need a couple extra days, but he certainly won't miss the time that was originally expected. When the injury was first announced late in the offseason when he have unexpected surgery. But it also explains why they waived a few of these extra forwards too, like Nylander and Zohorna. That spot that they were kind of battling for suddenly wasn't going to be there. So we'll see where that goes and if he can play on opening night. The Toronto Maple Leafs today also made a announcement on some hirings for their front office. We already had said before it looked like Curtis McElhinney was going to be getting a role with the team, and now we know what that is. That's now official. He's been made the director of goaltending development and scouting. Jake Muslin's also been given a role of a pro scout, and Chris Bourque is taking on a role with the Leafs of a college scout. Specifically looking at college free agents, so undrafted players. Jake Muzzin obviously is still under contract for the year, not expected to play. Pro scout really will probably mean, I would suspect, he'll likely travel with the team a bit when he's able to. And otherwise, really, you're kind of just watching all the other NHL teams and kind of keeping an eye on players that the Leafs might have interest in. So that seems like something he could handle for the time being. Although I thought there was a few years ago that there was somebody that was on LTI and they said they couldn't officially work in another role until their contract was expired or something. But I haven't heard anything about that today. But I know I just remember something about that in the past. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll have to look into that just to see. Staying with the Leafs for a minute, they also made some interesting roster adjustments today to be cap compliant, and they held on to a couple youngsters in Fraser Minten and Easton Cowan. They're both on the roster for now. Nick Robertson was demoted. Holmberg was also demoted as well, which is certainly probably a bummer for those guys, but it doesn't absolutely mean for sure that they're not going to be able to get into games, or at least not to get into games very quickly here. For example, I expect Fraser Minten to get a 8 to 9 game tryout before that contract kicks in. If it's hard to say if he sticks or goes back to the WHL. Easton Cowan is expected to go back to the London Knights of the OHL. He might get a game or two. It's hard to say, but they might even reassign him back to junior before they even play. It's hard to say. He's on the roster today for them to be compliant. They could send him to junior and recall somebody else as early as tomorrow or sometime this week. So we'll see where that goes, or they might decide to keep him around a little bit. But for today, when rosters had to be submitted, both youngsters technically made the club for now. Zach Benson in Buffalo, one of the other 2023 draft selections, made the roster for Buffalo as well, and will at the very least get a decent tryout before the contract kicks in. If things aren't working out, maybe they send him back. But he is going to make the roster, which is certainly fair to say. A lot of people thought that he was drafted lower than he should have been, and he's already proven people wrong on that front. Matthew Phillips, former Calgary Flame, who really accomplished everything he could in the AHL and couldn't get an opportunity, especially under Daryl Sutter, has made the team in Washington. There was some strong consideration by Phillips to stay in Calgary because they did offer to re-sign him. I knew the new regime there was kind of looking for an opportunity, looking forward to working with them, but certainly he saw an opportunity, obviously, to go to Washington with his former American Hockey League coach. Obviously started working on the staff there, which kind of made it intriguing for him, and Phillips is on the Capitals roster, so it's nice to see him finally getting a chance. Now, looking at some trade talk around the league, some rumors flying around about a few teams, most of which came from the 32 Thoughts podcast and Elliot Friedman today. Wondering about a fresh start for Nick Robertson. This is obviously a number of camps now that he's not made the team. This is going to be getting a little frustrating for him, especially to see other youngsters on the team get ahead of him, like Cowan and Minten, who are going to be getting more of an opportunity early. At least it looks that way. Or Robertson obviously has missed time because of injuries and whatnot, but you got to think with the depth they have on the wings that maybe they do try to package Robertson and then move somewhere else. We had talked before about the fact that if there's any area of the team the Leafs are going to try to upgrade throughout the season, it's probably going to be the blue line. Brad Treliving has a reputation of really focusing hard on the blue line and being as strong as possible. And he comes into a team that has a ton of great forwards. They brought in a few more good ones this year, like Bertuzzi and Domi, etc. So they have great depth in their top 6, top 9 players. Really, if they're going to focus, it's going to be defense. There's no doubt about it. Maybe Robertson could be packaged up with another player or something to try to bring in another solid top 4 defenseman or something like that. I know some people think that they really need more of a true top pair guy. I know they probably want to give some opportunities between Riley and John Klingberg this year, so we'll see where that goes. But ultimately, the main thing, though, for Robertson is just to get a chance to play and show what he can do. Obviously, last year he dealt with the injury. He's had a few good moments in Toronto, but it's hard to see right now a path with some of these other players that they've brought in through free agency and through the offseason and other means, and then some of these other guys coming up through the ranks, through the prospect system that are getting ahead of them. So you do wonder if a fresh start might be what's needed. Obviously, in Ottawa, they're still not signing Shane Pinto as of yet. Elliot Friedman talked about this in the podcast today as well, saying that originally the Sens were offering around 1.9. Pinto was at 2.5. So you have to think here in the next couple of days they'll get that gap bridged and get him there, especially with the uncertainty around Josh Norris and when he's going to play. Friedman has reiterated at this point that the player and the team still do not want a trade. But he did wonder, though, that if things drag on too long and maybe things change on that front, he said look for a team like the Islanders to maybe get interested. Obviously, the Islanders, he expects right now are kind of watching this closely, maybe kind of kicking some tires a little bit. Pinto is from Long Island. They could use some youth. They could use some depth at the center. And he wonders if they would make a play to try to make that happen. The only thing with that is I don't know. Like I said, at this point, Ottawa does not want to move him. But if they did, they're going to want a similar player back. And I just don't know that the Islanders really have what they want in that regard. And just because he grew up in Long Island, I do believe, though, that he actually grew up a Penguins fan. Because I know, listening to him talk in different interviews and things I've seen, I believe he was a big Crosby fan and preferred the Penguins, actually. So, clearly, I know he's got a lot of family there. I'm not saying he wouldn't want to play there. I'm just saying that for his own sake, I'm not sure that it's that important. I think obviously right now the main thing is to get the deal done with the Sens, and if they're that close, you'd think they'd be able to bridge the gap. But obviously the Islanders, they do make sense. I mean, they could use them for sure, and there is that hometown connection. Clearly, though, if they don't put Norris on LTIR, they still need to make a trade and another move, whether it be Matthew Joseph or somebody else. So they have to get this looked after. Getting kind of tired of talking about it, and it needs to be put to rest here. But the other big bombshell that Allred dropped on 32 Thoughts today was about Elias Pettersson in Vancouver, talking about the fact that obviously they did an interview with Pettersson during the media tour in Europe earlier in the offseason, and he made it clear that he was not ready to commit to a long-term contract with Vancouver as of yet. He really wasn't even giving it any thought. He's at a point where he just wants to focus on his training and having getting himself ready to have as best a season as possible, and then he wanted to see where things went with the team before making a long-term decision. And now Friedman's saying that ever since Friedman interviewed him and he made those comments, that the team kind of has the same sort of opinion right now, and they're like, they don't really want to give a commitment either. I mean, this guy put up 102 points last year. His cap hit $735, but he's earning over $10 million in salary. It's expected he's going to want that type of salary or better for the next contract, which 100-point number one line center, you can justify paying that. You could justify paying him 11 or more. So, to be honest, I don't understand why Vancouver would be reluctant. Now, I guess the only reason they would be reluctant is if they think he doesn't want to stay, but they should want him to, and they should want to pay him handsomely because he's that important to them. So it doesn't make sense to me why that would be a mutual feeling. It just really does not project well for me, for them working something out and him staying. At this point, it sounds like I would be quite surprised if we hear anything about an extension during the year. Of course, he's a restricted free agent, so it's not the end of the world. It's not like he's going to walk for nothing. But I can see this possibly developing into a Matthew Tkachuk scenario where at the end of the year, if he's not happy, let's say they don't make the playoffs, if the things don't go well, and if they're not making him a huge offer to make him feel valued, maybe he's like, yeah, you know what, I don't want to play here anymore. And they can still trade him. They can do a sign and trade. They can still hopefully get good value for him. But it's hard to win those deals. I mean, look at Calgary last year after trading Tkachuk. Sure, on paper, looked great. And we'll see if longer term, if Huberdeau bounces back and how Uyghur works out. Maybe for Calgary, long term, it does work out pretty good. Hard to say, but it's risky. When you're trading the best player in the deal, it's really hard to win those trades. It's just that simple. So we're going to have to see how this plays out. But this is going to be one of the more interesting scenarios, in my opinion, to watch. I mean, it's not often you get a centerman of that quality, of that caliber, that might become available at that young of an age. You get the odd one, it does happen, but not usually. Like, even look at some of the ones that it's happened to, like a Jack Eichel, for example. Eichel was not established as a 100-point centerman when he was dealt by the Sabres. So at the end of the day, it's an unusual circumstance. So we'll see where this goes, but I would suspect that, based on what I see in Vancouver, I mean, I think I wouldn't say playoffs are absolutely no, but I think they're going to have a real tough time getting in, and I would say the odds are against them of getting in. I know in my prediction videos, which I'm going to be putting out probably for tomorrow, I don't have them making the playoffs. So we'll see what happens, but I mean, Pettersson is one of those guys who can kind of drag the team along, and if he's not content with the supporting cast and how they value him, then maybe this could be a real interesting scenario. Plays out next offseason. We'll have to see where it goes, but quite surprised to hear that the Canucks are not lining up to make a huge commitment to him as well. But let me know what you think on the Pettersson situation, how that's going to play out long term as well. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.